Welcome to episode 10 of this Every Move Explained series, where we see two chess legends, Paul Morphy facing off with the white pieces against Adolf Anderssen in the year 1858. And before I begin this game, I would just like to mention the upcoming 150th video for this channel will be happening soon. And I request that everyone leave comments with a vote for who they think is the greatest chess player of all time. And then we'll do a game review on that greatest chess player for the 150th video. And now back to the game. We have Morphy with the white pieces, and he opens with e4. And so this is a good move if you like to attack, as e4 pawn openings usually lead to open games where the pawns in the center are traded away and the pieces have more room to maneuver and attack. So when you're starting out in chess, e4 is a good move to play because it leads to open positions where you can use your pieces to attack and learn how to attack with your pieces and how to coordinate them. Where if you play d4 pawn openings, that usually leads to a more closed position that is a little more difficult to play, with more maneuvering around the pawns that are stuck in the center. All right, now e5 is played in response. So this mirrors Paul Morphy's move. It helps give room for the bishop and the queen to develop, and it helps fight for the center, controlling this d4 square. That way, white cannot just place both of his pawns in the center. Otherwise, this e-pawn would capture on d4. And so now we have f4, the king's gambit. And a gambit is an opening where a player usually gives up a pawn in hopes of achieving some kind of benefit by doing that. So here, by giving up this pawn, if black captures, which he does, it will pull this center pawn on e5 away to the side and give white more control in the center. And so f4 hopes to pull away this pawn, and black does capture here. So this pulls his center pawn out of the middle off to the side here. And now knight to f3 is played. So this just develops the knight, but it keeps the queen out of this h4 square for a possible check on the king. And we have g4. So this move has the possible threat of moving to g4 here and attacking the knight, kicking that knight out of the way, and allowing the queen to come in here with a check on the king. And so Morphy just responds by developing his bishop to this great square here on c4, where it controls the center, attacking d5 here, and it also attacks this diagonal up to the f7 pawn, which is usually a weak spot. The f pawns are one of the weakest pawns, probably the weakest pawn on each side, because the only thing protecting that pawn in the beginning is just the king. So this is a weak spot that you can pile up your pieces on and try and get some advantage in a lot of openings. And so now bishop to g7 is played. So this develops the bishop and also puts it on this good line that covers this diagonal right down through the center of the board. And now we have castling by white. So this gets the king to safety, but it puts this rook on this half open file here, where eventually the rook can put pressure on this f pawn and also up here to this f7 weak pawn up here, which is already being attacked by the bishop. And so now we have d6. So this gives room for the bishop here to develop on c8 along this diagonal. Also, this d6 move helps control this e5 square here. And now we have c3. So this move does a few things. It controls or helps control this d4 square, which could support this d pawn being pushed up to d4 here. And this is another result of the gambit. Since this central e pawn captured the f pawn in the beginning of the game and was pulled away from the center, white will be able to play a d4 move here without the e pawn capturing. And also this c3 move allows the queen to come out through this diagonal, jumping up here to b3 and creating a battery to put pressure on that weak f7 pawn. And so we have the knight here just developing. If we look at the evaluation already, black is ahead over half a pawn because he captured that pawn, so he's still ahead in material. But white is building pressure, controlling the center a little bit better. And so now we have queen to b3, piling up on this f7 pawn. And so black moves his queen to e7 to protect this f7 pawn, prevent check here by this bishop capture. And also the queen is putting pressure on this e pawn. But now we have d4, creating this strong pawn center, controlling a lot of squares, blocking this bishop, keeping the knight out of e5, and creating room for this bishop to possibly attack along this diagonal, although this g pawn is protecting the f4 pawn at the moment. And so now we have a6. And we see here, it looks like this was a mistake, a slow move. It looks like a6 was played to possibly allow b5 attacking this bishop. But if we go back and we look before that a6 move, black was ahead, and it looks like he had multiple moves he could have made to stay ahead. It looks like he needed to protect this g5 pawn, and the computer recommends bishop to h6 here, which helps protect this pawn, or h6 with the pawn protecting the g5 pawn. But we'll see why it was important to protect this pawn here in a minute. So in the game, a6 was played, possibly trying to push b5 next and attack the bishop. But we have the knight capturing here on g5. And now this creates problems for black. This is why black needed to protect this g5 pawn, because now we have the queen, bishop, and the knight all piling up on this f7 pawn. And now the rook can also capture here on f4 and put even more pressure on the f7 weak spot here. And so black, with limited options, he plays the best move. Queen captures the knight. But now we see the evaluation is in white's favor, and it looks like he has one move that gives him the advantage, and he plays that. So he plays bishop, captures this f7 pawn, checking the king, and so the king must retreat. The king moves to d8. And then the attack continues with bishop capturing this pawn on f4. And so now we see white's pieces just funneling in with an attack on black here. And so now the queen is under attack, and the queen retreats to e7 here. And let's see if he had a better move. It looked like queen to g4 is the move that the computer gives as best here. But even then, white would be up almost a pawn and a half worth of material in the evaluation. And after this queen retreat to e7, now it is almost +2 in, well, actually +2 in white's favor. And so the game continues with bishop capturing here on g8. And so instead of recapturing, which is not possible, well, it's possible, but if the rook captures this queen, would just recapture the rook. So now the evaluation is even higher in white's favor, almost 3 pawns worth. And so here, if we go back, it looks like bishop to d7 was the best move. But in the game, bishop to g4 was played, which swings the evaluation more in white's favor. And then here we have knight to d2 is played next. The computer wants d5 instead, which centralizes the queen and helps control more of the center and guards this e4 pawn, which is under attack by the queen. But black is in a dangerous situation here, stuck in the middle. And Morphy just develops another piece. So he had a rook and a knight that were doing nothing over here in the corner. So a principle in chess is to get all your pieces activated as quickly as possible. And so Morphy does that by trying to get the last 2 pieces that were stuck in the corner into the game. And so he jumps this knight up to d2, where it is defending this pawn. And then we have king to d7 here. And so this move will help the rooks to connect here. It allows a threat on this bishop now. So now one or the other rook may capture the bishop and be protected. They would protect each other and the queen would not be able to recapture. So the bishop is threatened and this bishop moves away to the center, now attacking this knight and fortifying this pawn at the same time. But white is ahead in material, and so with the bishop here, he most likely plans to just exchange off more material, because once you're ahead in material, it's a good idea to exchange off more material, and in the end, you'll just be ahead material and be able to use that extra piece or whatever you have to your advantage in the end by picking off your opponent's pawns and helping one of your pawns promote to a queen. And so black tries to avoid trades by retreating his knight, but we have the bishop capture here. And so this is possible because the rook cannot pin this bishop to the queen. Well, let's see. Maybe he can do that. It looks like it would not be in black's favor to do that, because if rook to b8 was played, okay, the queen could just check on a4 and get out of this pin, giving the bishop time to retreat. But it looks like knight takes b7 is actually the best move, and that is what Anderssen played. And Morphy is known as one of the greatest chess players of all time, but Adolf Anderssen was also known as possibly, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think he was known as the first unofficial world champion after a tournament that he won, I believe, around 1851, but I would have to double check that information. But Adolf Anderssen was known as one of the great attackers from his period in the mid 1800s. So he was a great attacking player, but he just, as great as he was, Morphy was incredible, and he just had trouble playing against Morphy. And so here we have queen capturing on b7, and now a5 is played, and there the evaluation jumps even further in white's favor. So if we go back, instead of that a5 move, it looks like the computer likes rook at h to b8 the best here, which attacks the queen. And it looks like after that move, if that would have been played, rook at h to b8, the queen would retreat back to the center, and then it wants a queen to e6 move, and white would avoid trading the queens because this king is stuck in the center. So another thing, if you are under a heavy attack, a lot of times it can be to your advantage to trade off queens, because that will relieve a lot of the attacking pressure on you. And also, if you have a good attack going, especially if your opponent's king is stuck out in the open, usually it is good to avoid queen trades, because that queen is a valuable attacking piece that can help you try and checkmate your opponent when their king is stuck in the open. Okay, so a5 was played, and the evaluation jumps even more in white's favor here. And so now Morphy just captures here on d6, sacrificing that bishop. And let's see if that was the most recommended move. And it was. It says that the computer evaluates that as the best move here. So what that move does, it breaks up a little bit of the pawn cover by capturing one of the pawns around the king. But more importantly, it allows this rook to jump into the game here, and it was blocked by the bishop, but now the rook may come into play. And so here, bishop captures on d4 is played. And so if I go back and see, it looks like that is the second best move. Queen captures on d6 looks to be the best move, but obviously Black did not want to play that because of rook would, if the queen captured on d6, the rook would jump up here to f7 and fork the king and this bishop and just cause even more problems. But it was still the best that Black had, because now Black is just losing, and the game continued with bishop capturing here. And then Morphy just calmly captures the material, and now the queen captures here, and finally this rook jumps up to f7, checking the king. And here Anderssen resigned, as he didn't want to play on further. If we look at the best moves that Black could play, it would be king to e8, but even with this, it shows that it is +8 almost in white's favor. And so we could play this out. King to e8 would attack the rook. But then we have queen capturing here, checking. The king would capture. But then the queen would go on here to capture and just grab even more material. And this queen would guard this d4 pawn to prevent a capture with check, which would then allow this knight to be picked off. But here we just see in this position, white is ahead and would win the game with this extra material, this extra rook and extra pawns. And so Adolf Anderssen resigned, and Morphy wins this game here. And these two chess legends, if you would like to study chess games of the old masters from back in the 1800s, I would definitely recommend to study games by Paul Morphy for sure, and also Adolf Anderssen. If you like attacking games and would like to sharpen your attacking skills, study Adolf Anderssen. But Morphy, just an amazing player. It's too bad he didn't play very long, and we don't have more chess games by Paul Morphy. Anyway, that is the conclusion of episode 10 of this Every Move Explained series. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments or suggestions. Especially leave comments for your vote for who you think is the greatest chess player of all time for the upcoming 150th video, and we'll feature that player, a game review with that player who you vote for as the greatest chess player of all time. Thank you, and have a great day, everyone.